Have you ever caught someone staring at you with that puzzled expression, trying to figure out your age? That moment when they tilt their head slightly, squint their eyes, and you can practically see the mental math happening behind their gaze. You know exactly what I'm talking about. This period, that strange mixture of curiosity and disbelief, when people realize you look significantly younger than the number of years you've been walking this earth. But here's what no one tells you about that moment. It's not just about genetics. It's not just about skincare routines or lucky DNA. What you're witnessing is something far more profound, something that Carl Jung, one of the greatest scholars of the human mind, would recognize immediately as a window into your soul. You see, when people can't place your age, they're actually encountering something that makes them deeply uncomfortable. They're face to face with someone who has refused to surrender to time in the way society expects. And that refusal, it triggers something primal in them, something they've buried so deep they don't even know it's there. The truth is, your youthful appearance is a mirror. Not the kind of mirror that shows your physical reflection, but the kind that reveals what others have lost and desperately wish they could reclaim. When they look at you, they see their own abandoned dreams staring back at them. They see the part of themselves they killed off in the name of being realistic or mature. Jung called this the shadow. Those aspects of ourselves we deny, reject, and push into the darkness of our unconscious mind. For most people, youthfulness becomes shadow material. The moment society tells them it's time to grow up and act their age. They bury their playfulness, their wonder, their spontaneity. They pack away their dreams like childhood toys in an attic, telling themselves they'll come back to them someday. But you never fully complied with that burial. When someone looks at you and feels that strange mix of admiration and irritation, what they're really experiencing is projection. They're seeing in you what they've disowned in themselves. The part of them that refuses to accept limitations, the part that still believes in magic, the part that won't surrender to the slow death of dreams that society calls maturity. This is why some people become almost hostile when they encounter someone who appears younger than their years. It's not really about you at all. It's about what you represent. You're walking evidence that there's another way to move through life. That growing older doesn't have to mean growing smaller, that aging doesn't require the death of wonder. Think about the last time someone made a comment about how young you look. Really examine their tone. Was there something underneath the compliment, a slight edge, a hint of something that didn't quite feel celebratory? That's the sound of their shadow speaking. That's the of everything they've convinced themselves they had to give up. You trigger their unconscious because you're living proof that they made a choice. Not a necessity, a choice. They chose to let their inner light dim. They chose to accept that dreams have expiration dates. They chose to believe that responsibility means the death of joy, and your presence reminds them, whether they realize it or not, that these were choices, not inevitabilities. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Your youthful appearance isn't just triggering their shadow, it's revealing yours too. Because the very thing that makes you appear younger, the very quality that others find so unsettling, might also be the thing that's keeping you from becoming fully who you're meant to be. Jung believed that true psychological development requires us to integrate all aspects of ourselves, including the ones we'd rather avoid, and sometimes clinging too tightly to youth can be its own form of shadow work avoidance. Ask yourself this: what are you afraid would happen if you allowed yourself to look your age? What would it mean to embrace the wisdom that comes with years lived? What parts of maturity have you been rejecting that might actually serve your growth? The paradox is this: your youthful appearance might be both a gift and a prison. A gift because it reflects an inner vitality that refuses to be extinguished. A prison because it might be protecting you from aspects of psychological development that require you to move beyond the comfort of eternal youth. Most people who appear younger than their years share certain psychological patterns. They tend to maintain a sense of curiosity about life. They haven't fully bought into the collective agreement that aging means accepting less. They've maintained some connection to what Jung called the eternal child archetype, that part of the psyche that remains forever open to wonder and possibility. But they also tend to struggle with certain aspects of what society considers adult responsibilities, not because they're incapable, but because part of them rebels against the heaviness that adults seem to carry. The weight of expectations, the burden of realism, the surrender of dreams in favor of security. This rebellion shows up in your face. It shows up in your energy. It shows up in the way you move through the world. People can sense that you haven't fully subscribed to the collective depression that passes for adulthood in our culture. You haven't agreed to the slow suffocation of your spirit that so many accept as the price of growing older. When Jung talked about individuation, the process of becoming whole, he emphasized that it requires integrating both the light and dark aspects of our nature. For someone who appears younger than their years, this might mean learning to integrate not just their youthful vitality, but also the wisdom and gravitas that can come with embracing their actual age and experience. The people who react strongly to your youthful appearance are unconsciously recognizing something they've lost, but they're also potentially seeing something you might need to find. The balance between eternal youth and earned wisdom, the integration of playfulness and responsibility, the harmony between dreams and reality. Your face is telling a story, not just about good genes or healthy living, though those might play a role. It's telling the story of someone who has maintained a certain relationship with life itself. Someone who has refused to let the world convince them that joy has an expiration date. Someone who has kept alive the part of themselves that believes in possibility. But stories, even beautiful ones, can become prisons if we're not careful. If your youthful appearance becomes too much of your identity, if it becomes the thing you cling to in order to avoid other aspects of growth, then it stops serving your highest development and starts limiting it. The mirror you present to others is also reflecting something back to you. When they see their lost youth in your face, what do you see in their reaction? Do you see the wisdom you've been avoiding, the groundedness you've been rejecting, the depth that can only come from fully embracing both the light and shadow of your life experience? Jung understood that everything in the psyche exists for a reason. Your youthful appearance exists for a reason. The reactions it triggers in others exists for a reason. The discomfort it sometimes creates exists for a reason. All of these phenomena are breadcrumbs leading you toward a deeper understanding of who you are and who you're becoming. The question isn't whether appearing younger than your age is good or bad. The question is, what is this phenomenon trying to teach you about yourself? What aspects of your psychology does it reveal? What shadows does it illuminate, both in yourself and in others? Because here's what Carl Jung knew that most people never learn. Everything that happens to us, everything that triggers us, everything that makes others uncomfortable around us is information. It's data about the unconscious forces at work in our lives and in the lives of those around us. Your youthful appearance is creating a psychological field around you. People enter that field and react. Their reactions tell you something about them, yes, but they also tell you something about yourself. They tell you what part of the collective unconscious you're carrying, what archetypal energy you're embodying, what aspect of the human experience you're being called to explore and understand. The people who see you and feel triggered by your apparent youth are having an encounter with their own unlived life. The dreams they abandoned, the vitality they surrendered, the part of themselves they agreed to sacrifice on the altar of social acceptability. You become a walking reminder of the road not taken, the choice not made, the life not lived. But you're also potentially encountering your own unlived life through their reactions, the wisdom you haven't claimed, the gravitas you haven't developed, the depths you haven't explored because you've been too busy preserving the heights of eternal youth. This is the dance of projection that Jung wrote about so extensively. We see in others what we cannot or will not see in ourselves. The person who judges your youthful appearance as somehow unfair or fake is really struggling with their own relationship to aging and time. But your reaction to their judgment is also revealing something about your own shadows around maturity and responsibility. The spiritual meaning of appearing younger than your age isn't just about maintaining vitality or refusing to surrender to time. It's about being called to serve as a bridge between two worlds, the world of eternal possibility and the world of lived experience, the world of dreams and the world of reality, the world of youth and the world of wisdom. You're being asked to hold both, not to choose between them, but to integrate them, to show others that they don't have to kill their inner child to become a functional adult, that they don't have to surrender their dreams to embrace responsibility, that aging can be a process of expansion rather than contraction. But this calling also requires you to do your own integration work, to examine what aspects of true maturity you might be avoiding, what wisdom you might be rejecting, what growth opportunities you might be resisting because they require you to move beyond the comfortable identity of eternal youth. The mirror you present to the world is reflecting back to you the exact lessons you need to learn. The people who react to your youthful appearance with discomfort are showing you something about the collective shadow around aging, but they're also potentially showing you something about your individual shadow around growing into the fullness of who you're meant to become. Your face, your energy, your presence in the world is creating a psychological experiment every time you encounter another person. You're testing their relationship with time, with aging, with the parts of themselves they've agreed to abandon, but you're also being tested. Your reactions to their reactions are revealing your own unconscious patterns and beliefs. This is why appearing younger than your age is not just a physical phenomenon, it's a psychological one, a spiritual one. It's your soul's way of working through some very specific lessons about authenticity, integration, and what it truly means to mature as a human being. The story is just beginning to unfold. What you're experiencing now, this phenomenon of looking younger than your years and the reactions it creates, is preparing you for something deeper, something that will require you to understand not just what you've maintained, but what you might need to embrace.
Every single day you make thousands of choices without even realizing it. The coffee you drink, the clothes you wear, the words you speak, all programmed responses from patterns buried so deep in your mind that you've forgotten they exist. But what happens when those patterns start working against you? What happens when your own mind becomes the very prison keeping you trapped? Consider this scenario for a moment. You wake up tomorrow morning with the absolute certainty that you're going to change your life. You're going to exercise, eat better, be more productive, speak up in meetings, finally ask for that promotion. The determination feels real, doesn't it? The motivation burns bright in your chest. Yet by noon you're back to scrolling mindlessly through your phone, reaching for junk food, avoiding that important conversation you promised yourself you'd have. This isn't laziness. This isn't weakness. This is your unconscious mind staging a rebellion against your conscious desires,
and it's winning every single battle. Your brain operates on two distinct levels that most people never learn to distinguish. The conscious mind, that inner constantly chattering away, by Livy's it's running the show. It makes plans, sets goals, analyzes problems, and congratulates itself on being so rational and in control. Meanwhile, the unconscious mind, vast, silent, and infinitely more powerful, actually determines what you do, how you feel, and who you become. The unconscious mind processes 11 million bits of information every second, while your conscious mind can barely handle 40. Think about that ratio for a moment. You're walking around believing that the tiny sliver of awareness you call thinking is steering your life, when in reality, it's like a passenger on a massive ship, occasionally shouting directions at a captain who isn't even listening. This captain, your unconscious mind, has been collecting data about you since before you could walk. Every experience, every emotion, every success and failure has been catalogued and converted into automatic programs that now run your life. These programs were designed to keep you safe, to help you survive, to protect you from pain. But here's where things get interesting, and frankly, a bit terrifying. Many of these programs were installed when you were a child, operating on a child's understanding of the world. The unconscious mind of a 5-year-old who got laughed at for singing too loud might install a program that says, "Don't draw attention to yourself." The unconscious mind of a 7-year-old whose parents fought about money might create a program that equates financial success with conflict and stress. The unconscious mind of a teenager who got rejected might build walls so high that intimacy becomes impossible. These programs made perfect sense when they were created. They served their purpose, they protected you, but now, decades later, they're still running, still making decisions for you, still keeping you small and safe and unfulfilled. Here's what makes this phenomenon so insidious. Meaner conscious mind will actually create elaborate justifications for unconscious behaviors. You'll convince yourself that you're not ready for that opportunity, that you don't have time for self-care, that you're being realistic about your limitations. Your rational mind becomes the unconscious mind's public relations department, spinning every self-sabotaging decision into something that sounds reasonable and mature. The rebellion manifests in countless ways. You set an alarm to wake up early, but somehow you always hit snooze. You plan to eat healthy, but your hand reaches for processed food without conscious thought. You decide to be more confident in social situations, but your gets quiet, your posture shrinks, and you fade into the background. You commit to working on that creative project, but suddenly every other task becomes urgently important. This isn't random, this isn't coincidence. This is systematic resistance from an unconscious mind that believes change equals danger. Your unconscious mind operates on the principle that familiar equals safe, even when familiar is miserable. It would rather keep you in a job you hate, a relationship that drains you, or habits that harm you, than risk the unknown territory of growth and change. From its perspective, staying exactly where you are is the ultimate act of self-preservation. But here's what's truly fascinating about this internal war. Most people never realize it's happening. They experience the symptoms without understanding the cause. They feel stuck, frustrated, like they're fighting against some invisible force, but they blame external circumstances, other people, bad luck, or their own lack of willpower. The truth is far more complex and far more hopeful. You're not weak, you're not broken, you're not lacking in motivation or discipline. You're simply caught in an ancient survival mechanism that hasn't updated its software in decades. Every time you've started a new habit and quit after a few days, that's the unconscious rebellion.
Every time you've had a brilliant idea but talked yourself out of pursuing it, that's the unconscious rebellion. Every time you've known exactly what you needed to do but found yourself doing the opposite, that's the unconscious rebellion. Your conscious mind says, I want to be successful, while your unconscious mind whispers successful people get attacked, criticized and envied. Stay small, stay safe. Your conscious mind declares, I want love and connection, while your unconscious mind responds, love means vulnerability, and vulnerability means potential pain. Build higher walls. The rebellion operates through what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, mentis, the mental discomfort you feel when your beliefs and actions don't align. Instead of changing the actions to match the beliefs, most people unconsciously adjust their beliefs to match their actions. They lower their standards, shrink their dreams, and convince themselves they never really wanted those things anyway.
This process happens so smoothly, so automatically, that you might not even notice it occurring. One day you're passionate about learning piano, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, you start believing you're not musical. One day you're excited about starting a business, and slowly you become convinced you're not entrepreneurial material. The rebellion doesn't announce itself with dramatic fanfare. It works through subtle shifts in perception, gentle adjustments in self-concept, quiet modifications of identity. The most skilled rebels understand that direct confrontation rarely works. Instead, they use misdirection, distraction, and delay. Your unconscious mind might not stop you from signing up for the gym, but it will ensure you forget your workout clothes. It might not prevent you from buying healthy food, but it will make sure you're too tired to cook it. It might not block you from applying for new jobs, but it will create mysterious technical difficulties when you try to submit applications. These aren't random obstacles or coincidences. They're strategic maneuvers in an ongoing campaign to maintain the status quo. Your unconscious mind has learned that subtle resistance is more effective than obvious opposition. If it prevented you from even attempting change, you might become suspicious and start investigating. Instead, it allows you to try while simultaneously sabotaging your efforts in ways that seem external and beyond your control. The rebellion also employs what researchers call licensing, the psychological phenomenon where taking one positive action gives you permission to take negative actions later. You eat a salad for lunch, so your unconscious mind decides you've earned that late-night pizza. You work out on Monday, so by Wednesday, you're unconsciously giving yourself permission to skip the gym. You have one productive conversation with your partner, so you unconsciously believe you can coast on relationship maintenance for weeks. This licensing system keeps you in a perpetual cycle of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. You make just enough progress to feel like you're trying, but never enough to actually reach your goals or transform your life. It's a brilliant strategy that maintains the illusion of effort while preserving the safety of stagnation. Understanding this rebellion changes everything. Once you recognize that an unconscious part of your mind is actively working against your conscious desires, you can stop fighting yourself and start working with your own psychology. You can stop interpreting resistance as weakness and start seeing it as information about the deeper programs running in the background of your mind. The key insight is that your unconscious mind isn't evil or malicious. It's protective. It's doing exactly what it was programmed to do decades ago. Myards keep you alive and safe, according to the data it collected when you were young and vulnerable. The problem is that those old programs are now preventing you from living fully, loving deeply, and expressing authentically. But recognition is just the beginning. Awareness alone won't reprogram decades of unconscious conditioning. That requires understanding not just that the rebellion exists, but how it operates, what triggers it, and most importantly, how to work with it instead of against it. The unconscious mind speaks in the language of feeling, symbol, and repetition. It doesn't respond to logical arguments or conscious willpower. It responds to consistent experience, emotional resonance, and gradual pattern adjustment. This is why traditional approaches to change trends, relying purely on motivation, discipline, and conscious effort, fail so consistently and spectacularly. Real transformation requires becoming fluent in the unconscious mind's native language. It requires learning to communicate with the part of yourself that's been protecting you through limitation, helping it understand that you're ready for something different now, that the old programs can finally be updated. This is delicate work. The unconscious mind has been your guardian for decades. It deserves respect, gratitude, and patience as you help it understand that what once protected you is now imprisoning you. The rebellion isn't your enemy, it's your protector that hasn't received the memo that you've grown up, that you're stronger now, that you're ready to handle the risks that come with fully showing up in your own life. The moment you stop fighting the rebellion and start understanding it, everything shifts. Instead of battling against mysterious internal resistance, you begin collaborating with the deepest, most powerful parts of your own mind. Instead of wondering why you can't seem to change despite wanting it so badly, you start working directly with the protective mechanisms that have been silently steering your life from the shadows. This is where true transformation becomes possible, not through overpowering your unconscious mind, but through earning its trust and gradually showing it new ways to keep you safe while allowing you to grow. The rebellion that once felt like your greatest obstacle becomes your most powerful ally in creating the life you've always known was possible. What happens when you finally break free from these unconscious patterns? What awaits you on the other side of authentic self-expression? The answer might surprise you, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that getting older means getting smaller, quieter, less relevant. There's a peculiar phenomenon that occurs when people reach their 50s, 60s and beyond. Something remarkable starts happening that goes against everything our youth-obsessed culture teaches us about aging. Instead of becoming more timid, more cautious, more concerned with what others think, many people experience what can only be described as a psychological liberation, a sudden and profound freedom to be exactly who they are without apology. Have you ever noticed how some older individuals seem to possess an almost supernatural confidence? How they speak their minds without filtering every word through the anxiety of social approval? How they pursue interests, wear clothes, express opinions, and live lives that would have terrified their younger selves? This isn't senility or loss of social awareness. This is the emergence of authentic aging metis, the process by which accumulated life experience finally overrides the programming that kept you small for decades. The irony is breathtaking. Just as society begins to dismiss you as less valuable, less attractive, less worthy of attention, you begin to care less about society's opinion than at any other point in your adult life. Just as the world tells you to become invisible, you finally develop the courage to be truly seen. This liberation doesn't happen automatically. It's not guaranteed simply by reaching a certain age. Many people grow older without ever experiencing this freedom, remaining trapped in the same patterns of people-pleasing, approval-seeking, and self-censorship that dominated their earlier years. But for those who do experience it, the transformation is nothing short of revolutionary.
The process begins with what psychologists call socio-emotional selectivity, the unconscious recognition that time is finite, which fundamentally changes how you allocate your mental and emotional resources. When you're 25, you have decades to recover from mistakes, repair relationships, or start over. When you're 65, time becomes precious in a way that forces radical prioritization.
This scarcity of time acts as a filter for authenticity. Suddenly, spending energy on people who drain you feels like robbery. Staying silent about things that matter feels like betrayal of your deepest values. Pretending to be someone you're not feels like wasting the limited time you have left to actually live. The fears that once controlled your behavior begin to lose their power through simple exposure and experience. By the time you've lived 5 or 6 decades, you've survived job losses, relationship endings, health scares, financial setbacks, and social embarrassments. You've learned through direct experience that most of the catastrophes your younger mind worried about either never happened or, when they did occur, were survivable. This experiential evidence gradually dismantles the unconscious programs installed during your formative years. The part of your mind that once whispered, "Don't speak up, or you'll be rejected," has witnessed you being rejected and surviving. The threat, warned, "Don't take risks or you'll fail," has seen you fail multiple times and recover. The program that insisted, "Don't be different or you'll be alone," has watched you conform for decades while still feeling isolated. The accumulated weight of lived experience becomes more powerful than inherited programming. Your unconscious mind finally receives updated information about what's actually dangerous and what's merely uncomfortable. The protective mechanisms that once seemed so necessary reveal themselves to be outdated software running on hardware that's become far more resilient than anyone imagined. But there's another factor at play in this liberation present, the gradual release from roles and expectations that defined your earlier years. The devoted parent whose children have grown independent, the ambitious professional who's achieved what they sought or accepted what they won't reach, the dutiful spouse whose marriage has either deepened into true partnership or ended in recognition of incompatibility. As these external roles lose their grip on your identity, space opens up for aspects of yourself that were suppressed or ignored for decades. The artist who became an accountant to pay bills might finally pick up a paintbrush. The sensitive soul who learned to be tough might allow vulnerability back into their relationships. The rebel who conformed to succeed might rediscover their authentic. This isn't midlife crisis minds that frantic, often destructive attempt to recapture youth. This is midlife awakening, the calm, deliberate choice to honor who you actually are, rather than who you thought you should be. The difference is profound. Crisis seeks to go backward, awakening moves forward into previously unexpressed possibilities. The liberation manifests differently for different people, but certain patterns emerge consistently. There's often a newfound willingness to express opinions that might be unpopular, a decreased tolerance for superficial social interactions, an increased interest in meaningful conversations and authentic connections, a strange immunity to fashion trends and social pressures that once felt irresistible. Many people report feeling like they're meeting themselves for the first time. After decades of adjusting their personality to fit various situations, relationships, and roles, they begin to sense their authentic core mind-us, the consistent thread of identity that exists, independent of external circumstances. This core self often differs dramatically from the persona they presented to the world for most of their adult life. The process can be initially disorienting. Friends and family members who knew you in your more conformist years might be confused or even threatened by your newfound authenticity. The person who never disagreed might start expressing contrary opinions. The people pleaser might begin setting boundaries. The chronic overgiver might start practicing selective generosity. These changes can create friction in relationships that were built on your willingness to be smaller than you actually are. Some relationships survive this transition and become deeper, more honest, more satisfying. Others reveal themselves to have been based on your willingness to play a role rather than be yourself, and naturally fade away.
This relationship attrition, while sometimes painful, is actually a crucial component of authentic aging. The friends who can only love the version of you that never challenges them weren't really friends with you. The family members who become uncomfortable when you stop absorbing their emotional overflow were never seeing you as a full person with your own needs and boundaries. The liberation extends beyond personal relationships into professional and creative realms. Many people in their later years pursue interests they abandoned decades earlier, start businesses that reflect their values rather than just generating income, or speak publicly about issues that matter to them regardless of potential backlash. There's often a shift from external validation to internal satisfaction. The applause of strangers becomes less important than the quiet pride of living according to your principles. The accumulation of possessions feels less compelling than the accumulation of meaningful experiences. The pursuit of conventional success gives way to the pursuit of personal fulfillment.
This doesn't mean becoming selfish or inconsiderate. In fact, many people become more genuinely generous as they age, giving from authentic abundance rather than desperate need for approval. When you're no longer performing kindness to be liked, your kindness becomes more targeted, more effective, more meaningful to both giver and receiver. The physical changes that accompany aging, while often challenging, can also contribute to this psychological liberation. When your body no longer matches cultural ideals of attractiveness, you might initially feel invisible or dismissed. But many people report that this invisibility, once they adjust to it, becomes a strange kind of freedom. Without the constant awareness of being evaluated for physical appeal, energy previously devoted to appearance management gets redirected toward more substantial pursuits. The mental bandwidth once occupied by clothing choices, weight concerns, and physical presentation becomes available for intellectual, creative, and emotional growth. There's also something profoundly liberating about accepting your mortality in a concrete rather than abstract way. When death shifts from a distant theoretical concept to a tangible future reality, the preciousness of remaining time clarifies what actually matters. The opinions of people you don't respect become irrelevant. The activities that drain rather than energize you become obvious candidates for elimination. This mortality awareness doesn't typically create morbid preoccupation, but rather acute appreciation. Colors seem more vivid when you realize you have limited time to see them. Conversations become more precious when you understand they're finite. Love deepens when you accept its temporary nature. The liberation of authentic aging challenges every assumption our culture makes about getting older. Instead of decline, many people experience expansion. Instead of withdrawal, they engage more fully with what matters to them. Instead of becoming more fearful, they become braver about expressing their truth. This transformation isn't automatic or universal, but it's available to anyone willing to question the unconscious programs that have been running their life. The same psychological mechanisms that can keep you trapped in inauthentic patterns can be redirected toward genuine self-expression once you understand how they operate. The key is recognizing that aging isn't something that happens to you by cause. It's something you can participate in consciously and intentionally. You can choose to let go of the roles and expectations that no longer serve you. You can decide to express the parts of yourself that have been waiting patiently in the wings for decades. You can opt to spend your remaining years being who you actually are, rather than who you thought you should be. This choice is available at any age, but it becomes more urgent and more possible as you accumulate life experience. The teenager lacks the evidence that conformity isn't actually safety. The 30-year-old still believes they have unlimited time to figure it out later. But by 50, 60, 70, the data is undeniable. Authenticity isn't a luxury you can postpone indefinitely. The liberation of authentic aging represents perhaps the greatest opportunity available to human beings, the chance to finally live as yourself, without apology, without pretense, without the exhausting effort of being someone you're not. It's the reward for surviving long enough to see through the illusions that govern younger years. It's the gift that comes with accepting both your limitations and your power. Most remarkably, this liberation often makes people more attractive, not less. Not in the conventional sense of physical beauty, but in the magnetic sense of authentic presence. There's something irresistibly compelling about a person who has stopped trying to be anything other than exactly who they are. The confidence that comes from self-acceptance radiates in a way that no amount of youthful beauty can match. The tragedy isn't that people age, it's that so many people age without ever discovering this liberation. They spend their final decades still trying to please, still hiding their truth, still waiting for permission to be themselves. The opportunity for authentic aging remains available until the very end, but it requires the courage to release everything you're not in service of everything you are.